I keep hearing everyone is very bullish on the kind of insights that AI can generate, the possibilities that are there, but it still sounds very blurry, or it's still very ambiguous as to what it means when you say that insights can be generated. And I want your answer from two fronts. Very honestly, I personally also keep getting confused about it. When you are riding the AI wave and you're looking at everything in a very optimistic way, it's very easy to confuse a product or a functionality that always existed all through to be something that has suddenly become possible.
Yeah.
And I keep running into these founders and they're like, we're doing an LLM. And I'm like, why do you need an LLM, right? Like, and I have made the mistake of doing this on my own. The second is you have a view, you have a definite view on like what tools exist in the world of analytics. I'm sure bigger companies where you have worked at, you had some internal tools as well, your own internal charter around everything. From the lens of an operator first, what do you think is missing largely in the tools that exist today? And how does it like really impact the decision making? I know why an analyst gets frustrated,
hmm
but the analyst is reporting to someone. Why are they
hmm
getting frustrated? And then someone is leading data. You are there. There's maybe like a CEO as well, who some people are rolling into. They are getting frustrated. Like, what are those blockers that you think get truly unlocked with the advent of AI, the new AI, not the always possible AI? But yeah.
Yeah. So good point there. Like what we didn't have, or what is this going to add? What is going to basically change overnight? What thing is going to change overnight with this AI that we are not able to do before, or where we see the value? I think for that we need to step back for a second. So I see that over the years, you know, when we have been looking into analytics, is for seeking answers from data, right? Purely speaking, analytics here. For the business, they want to make great, good business decisions. And for making those business decisions, they want to make those decisions data driven. Well, there's a part of opinion, part of experience, and all those things are there. But ultimately, from analytics side, they want to make data driven decisions. Over the years, we saw that there were several technologies that came in. You know, several decades ago, we were struggling with the right, I would say, data infrastructure where we can consume the data, right? Then write tools and technology. When I say consume the data, means manage the data. Sorry, the first part. Then how do we consume that data? Because the data has been growing. And over the years, as more data came along, infrastructure changes, technology changes, they all changes, those changes were made according to the need at that moment, right? Starting from data accessibility, visualization, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? What AI has helped is at least is poised to help us on is instead of going making that seeking that data driven answer as a tech or IT exercise where you go through this whole process of setting up the system, setting up the infra, and writing those complex processes to get the insights out, which takes longer time. It may enable business much more, I would say, adapt. It'll make the business much more adapt, where they can use simple English language to converse with the technology to get the answer what they're looking for. I think that's where the value is. It's not about replacing anything that has been done over the years, or it's not going to change anything overnight, but it gives more capability for the non-tech users to get the value out of the technology that's been built over the years.
So this is more about the democratization of data then, right? Like,
Exactly.
but with that, there's like a lot of unanswered questions. Now,
hmm
there's a group of analysts. These analysts do much more than just, like writing SQL or
hmm
drawing hypothesis or doing like some ML prediction algorithms and
hmm
whatever. And then where you say that, hey, people can just interact with data, talk with that data without being technical themselves, there's this lens of, do leaders really need it? Like, are they asking questions today? Are you going to be typing in a question that you have in your head, or are you still going to prefer, oh, I'm going to pick my phone up, call someone in my team, and see whether I can get the answer? Because there's a massive cultural shift. And
hmm
learnability, I think, in my experience, I've seen it's very tough to teach people something new,
hmm
like habit
Hmm.
is very,
Hmm.
very, very tough to replace. So what are your
Hmm.
views there? Like, do you see this happening? Do you see this happening at a company like Meta, given that you work there, or a company like Checker, or let's say all the way back to your experiences in the past? Do you see this
Hmm.
happening there? Do you see this happening more in relatively younger companies? Is there a different breed of tools? Like tons of thoughts around this. Maybe I can like follow up once you start talking with more questions.
Sure. So if I understand your question correctly, I think you're trying to understand it. Is this going to replace the old process of, senior executive calling somebody else to get the answers, or will it enable those senior executive to get into asking those questions themselves using this AI to be able to answer? Well, it depends, right? I think over the period of time and the access of tools and technologies in place, and understand and knowing that they want to make data-driven decisions, I think today's executives are much more savvy than the traditional executives who will have somebody who they will call and get them the answers, right? But that doesn't mean that those executives will dive deeper into looking at the data themselves. In fact, the quality of the good leader is to surround themselves with the experts around them, right?
Yeah.
So the way I see it is, it's not AI is not necessarily replacing the operate how the organization structure is set up or how the operations are run across different functions. It more so enabling capabilities and going through those processes much quicker, much easier than going through the traditional approach of any answer the executive is looking for, it becomes a project in itself,
Yeah.
right? So there's a lot of progress that we made already in that area. It's just that it's one step further in that direction where they will get quicker, cleaner, crisp answers much faster than setting up it as a standalone project in itself. That's
Got
just my
it.
thoughts.
Got it. No, so that's spot on. But a follow-up question to that obviously is that means the roles are going to change. Like I obviously almost, I don't think I have said it ever on the episode before, but I see what we are building at Crunch also as a parallel to a coffee cup or a notebook where an executive just thinks that they are going to be performing better or they're not going to be as optimum if they don't have their cup of coffee in the morning, right? Like, or if they're
Mm.
not taking these notes, if you take the notebook away and if someone is old fashioned, they will get really irritated. Like, if I take your Apple Notes, if you're using a MacBook, it is going to, because you're thinking through the tool. And I think that is where we are headed to. Copilots will sort of be compared with a cup of coffee that makes you function better in the day. But of course, there are challenges to it. Like implementing it means that the AI needs to have the same context that an analyst has. And I did touch upon this topic earlier, which was an analyst has a lot of bandwidth. An analyst has a lot of bandwidth going to topics that are beyond just, like crunching through code. They
Hmm.
have experience and so on. In your view, now that you look back, and I ask this to you as an engineering leader or as a senior engineering person or a senior analytics leader, what is likely the career path going to be for anyone who is a data analyst, who is an aspiring data analyst, who is an aspiring data scientist? Uh, how do you see that progression? And I know there's no right or wrong answer. We are all like probably witnessing a change that has never been seen before, but still very curious on what your personal thoughts are.
Um, I think at this point it's too early to comment on that area yet. It's still in the transition and still evolving. Um, I the I think the role of data analyst is still very critical because it is the actual connection between the ground truth and the outcome we are expecting or we are looking for. Um, and AI, as I said, sometimes I see the progress that we have made in terms of generative AI, for example, the Copilot or the other tools that have been released so far. They're more of a sort of wrappers around the core five AI engine that have been built by the big
Yeah,
fives so far. So that gives the capability, but to your point, not the context yet.
yeah,
So as you mentioned, there's a contextual awareness, there's a subject matter expertise, there is the real validation between the ground truth and the expectations that we are hoping so. So there's a ways to go, and I think it's too early to kind of judging on what's going to happen to certain roles in the future. So,
So when we talk about transformation capabilities,
mhm,
right? Like let's say context is missing, and
mhm,
the way at least we solve that internally here is through a metric layer or through a semantic layer. I don't
mhm,
know if that's necessarily the end outcome, if there's going to be a day where the AI would automatically be defining your semantic layer to that extent where you don't even touch it once. Um, we also enable AI to like define the semantic layer to some extent on its own, but there are still like you need a manual involvement. But that makes me
mhm,
think in the whole data stack, the one piece which would be probably be touched upon by companies like DBT Labs, Cube,
mhm,
at scale. These folks
mhm,
who do data transformation a lot, like it is going to be much more critical in this AI first world. That part of the tech stack, and it's
mhm,
surprising why it's not like blowing up the way it should. Like I keep questioning whether I have a grasp or a pulse on the whole space because in my view it should be. But
mhm.
there's definitely demand popping up. Is there any other, given that AI is still like inaccurate or still lacks certain things that we as human beings do? If my question to you is, let's say we should enable AI with everything that it lacks today so that any executive sitting in an office feels much more comfortable. What other parts of the tech stack would you say founders, aspiring builders could focus on today who are in the audience? Like, I think data transformation is one big aspect
Mhm.
where you are building that context. What else in your view?
I think the when you have this kind of conversations with the executives, talk just even having a conversation around bringing the AI capabilities which already exist today into your own company or in your business domains, the first and biggest concerns that arises around the security,
Yeah.
right? Especially considering that you know this Gen AI is very new capability, and all these vendors that have built capabilities using those engines, they're also very new at this time. So there is still that path to establishing that trust where many companies will feel secure using those capabilities. But what I've seen so far is that even if we continue talking about the security, what we have seen is that these AI programs are much more adopted and are actually being explored wholeheartedly in the places where there is heavier investment or confidence on the technical side of the house.
Yeah.
But for the non-tech companies, this is still a very new area, uh, almost a sense of FOMO if nobody's talking about AI in their area. But that
Yeah.
doesn't solve the need or even identify the need of AI in the space. So probably that's a separate topic. But to answer your question, I think it's more about the security at this time, which also remains a paramount concern.
Yeah. So that brilliantly ties up into something that I thought I should anyway ask in due course of our chat, which is,
Mhm,
you see, like founders when they're building something, and I'm guilty of that 100%. You think like that's gonna just change the world, right? Like you're like, oh, we're building this, and you're gonna go into a meeting, and people are gonna come with like gifts for you, so happy that hey, you've made the best thing in the world. And in their head, like they're playing like that. That okay, we're gonna be showing this, and then they're gonna be like, okay, we're gonna pay you this much, and here is a check. Take like solve my world. You're the best person. It rarely happens like that, right? Like in today, there's a massive challenge. So there were these classes of tools like Power BI, Tableau, the original players, right? Like who who did whatever they did, and it was brilliant for the time they came up. But thereafter, somewhere it started becoming not the go-to tool for everyone, right?
mhm,
Like, and
mhm,
I think that state continued for like about a decade, more or less.
mhm,
And there were new players coming up. There were these all of these pre-LLM era tools popping up, which were brilliant. Like marketing,
mhm,
I think as a vertical saw the most innovation happening. Like there were these all of these new age companies
mhm,
that help with different aspects of your marketing funnel, marketing journey. And again, like RevOps and all of these new functions. But broadly, when you look back on those tools now, they suddenly have accumulated data because it's not like no one was using Power BI. Everyone who's using Microsoft Power BI is like a brilliant tool. It was not the only tool they were using, but now Power BI can also go into a room and say, hey, we are adding these capabilities. It's built on our own thing. And suddenly people trust it. Like you would trust Tableau much more than you would trust a random zenzi.ai company, right? Like, and then I think that's something which most of the founders have underestimated, the
Mm-hmm.
amount of difficulty that they're going to face when they're trying to like build something which probably even works just because an incumbent might add it or probably is working on it. And the incumbent will roll it out very slowly, but they're still going to be the ultimate winner. And now
Right.
we're getting to that stage where you're going to see probably some sort of a crystallization. That's my personal take, where you'll see like two, three, four players take care of most of the part of your data stack. Like that
Mm-hmm.
age of collaboration is probably going to go out. I think it's in one of the episodes by founder of another data stack company, very popular one. I'm blanking out on the name right now, but anyway, like he talks about how there was an age where partnerships were a big thing in the age of
Mm-hmm.
data science,
Mm-hmm.
and it was like, okay, someone is going to do an ETL pipeline via you, and the next step is going to be me. Or here is a
Mm-hmm.
warehouse. I'm not going to do an ETL. You do like whatever, right? Like, so you'd collaborate with people, and now everyone is competing with everyone. As bad or as difficult it has become to do something on data stack, I think there's another aspect to it as well, which is a tool like Microsoft, Power BI, Tableau that has evolved over 2 decades or more
Mm-hmm.
and has all of the tons and tons of data and ownership and all of these new models that of course they are doing, which is like better than what a new age company can do because of the volume of data that they can train stuff on.
Mm-hmm.
It's very tough for a new founder to compete. So a simple question here is like, when I'm going into a room and talking to an exec who
Mm-hmm.
probably is thinking about, is it secure, is it going to be reliable, is it going to scale, is it going to make me look like an idiot, somewhere in the back of their head, that
Mm-hmm.
is a question, that is how they're evaluating. What should this founder be prepared about? Like, how would they navigate all of these incumbents? Is it just being good at tech, good enough? Like, or is there something else? If you were the buyer, what are you thinking in the head?
And this is what's the application of this product for this new founder?
Let's just say I come with this tool and go in and say, hey, this helps people in your organization interact with the data. So instead of the dashboard where an analyst is involved in the loop and you're looking at, like reports and you're asking questions, which they are again preparing reports on, we're giving you a chat interface. Just go ask any question. Now,
Mm-hmm.
great. That is cool. But then comes the question of, oh, but I just saw that Looker is also adding a chat,
Mm-hmm.
like a chat bar where you can play with that data. And
Mm-hmm.
this founder likely is going to go in and say, yeah, but there are limitations to what Looker is going to do. And
Mm-hmm.
usually that deal is not going to get closed. I'll tell you with experience, like that
Mm-hmm.
people are going to still try Looker. So if
Mm-hmm.
you are the buyer, what are you thinking in the head? Like what should a founder in our audience be ready with or be prepared about before they go in and approach a big company?
Yeah, I think that's a it's not a new problem and not necessarily technology problem. It's always any newcomer in have they find it hard to work with the incumbent already in place, so they have to make their own space in the market in one way or others. But in this case specifically, I think in terms of analytics, in terms of technology, there's already investment made by any company in certain established tool like Looker, Power BI, or Tableau in that case. And the argument will be more so like, hey, this is just one. If this is one incremental feature that this larger established um, visualization company already adding it soon, why would we care about something new? But the counter argument at the same time would be that the timelines of these new features for the larger companies are necessarily are outside of customer control, right? They have their own timelines. They have their own product milestones, and they will release the feature on their own at their own convenience, right? Whereas that gives if I'm an innovative company who wants really quick turnaround on the things or the initiatives that I'm working on, and I can partner with this new founder who can be that great partner from the get-go and help me achieve the goals for my business, yeah, I would definitely give it a shot. So there are ways, there are levers to work around. That will be an sometime an overhead on the new founder because now they have to work with several customers like myself because they're new and they will be getting a lot of custom demands. So can they keep up with that demand? But otherwise, I mean, those are some of the ways that's doable.
Okay. Rohit, I have a very personal question now. As you were talking about this, I'm thinking here. So AI has happened. You are a
Hmm.
leader. You've
Hmm.
been leading analytics teams for so long.
Mhm.
somewhere you are also amazed to some extent by the capabilities that have come in, right? Like, and
Mhm.
everyone I have spoken to is thinking about what that world 10 years later is going to look like.
Mhm.
Do you ever feel like, oh, I should probably also go get back into the building mode and like, like just to roll this out? Probably it's a game changer. Like, do you think that, or is it just like
Right.
me who is probably in this build mode and like I'm being ignorant about something that you have probably learned over with experience?
No, actually, you're right. I do think a lot of times, and I think this is something we touched upon in our last conversation as well, right? So some days, or at least, and this is my limited understanding of, or limited, view of the pattern that I'm seeing so far, is that most of the AI-based products that are being launched by the new startups are more so the wrappers around the core engines.
Yeah.
Core engines still remain the same, right? OpenAI, Gemini, etc., etc. And these wrappers are actually helping achieve specific business goals. So I do feel like, hey, I really want to get into the build cycle, write some useful, meaningful, actual use case, like product that should try for next decade. But I feel like, yeah. So there's an opportunity still there. It's just that, as I said, this area is evolving and changing quickly, like very quickly, and it's very hard to keep a pulse on exactly where it's going. So
Yeah.
at this time, we are still in that early exploratory partial adoption, figuring out exactly where we are going, along with keeping that compliance in perspective this time, which is
Yeah.
I'm really excited about. So yeah, so I think there's a lot of evolution over the next decade. So it's hard to say where it's going to land in the next 10 years, but it'll be very interesting to see where it leads us there.
Well, I think you should build something of your own because one thing that I probably find problematic, borderline, is while I believe that verticalization is the future and you would have some wrappers which would do things that foundational models would not do, or not just wrappers, like a wrapper might just be a wrong way to probably approach it. You have some proprietary stuff which the foundational
Hmm.
model would not be able to do it, but you have some verticalization or a domain specific capabilities where you are the best as compared to the others, and then people want to use you. But I think like as people are attempting these, most of the founders, because of the frenzy somewhere, it's also come to that spot where most of the founders are building wrappers on stuff that they do not have a background in. And it is bad because they have not seen what it's like when shit hits the fan, like what happens when a company is actually scaling, right? Like, and
Right.
it's probably now more of an illusion because a wrapper or an LLM can make it look like you have cracked a product, and you
Uh-huh.
have maybe cracked the product at the surface level, but a surface level is not the same as a $1 billion company. and
Yes,
and it's
100%.
it's gonna be, but hey, I'm just happy to see that more and more people are attempting this. How has your career shaped up, Rohit? Like, it's very interesting of a journey. What has happened over the years? How has your life been?
Um, Life has been great. Just going through my career journey real quick. It started as actually started my career with my own software startup during my undergrad, and that was also around data analytics at that time. So basically, second year of my undergrad, I thought, I need to make use of my computer science education, and the only best way of learning is by doing it. So I started my company, ran it for 2 years, had fun, but then decided to go back to the corporate world. And since that, for over the last 2 decades, I've been in the data analytics side, working across various diverse industries, including healthcare, finance, tech, mostly focus on the data analytics from starting from the data ingestion and data management to processing, accessibility, consumption, and analytics for our business side of the house. So yeah, that's been my journey.
Very interesting. So now that you have everything in the hindsight, would you change anything? Like, so I keep thinking about this deeply as to like what is the skill that is probably going to matter the most. And I think we have come to that spot where probably you could retire because you're financially successful, but you could never retire or stop learning, or, like go in and say that, hey, I am this person. Like, probably those roles are going to change very fast in future. People would be doing new things. For the first decade, you are something else. For the next decade, you have to find a new specialization. And it is a little bit unsettling because that way you are probably always learning new things and you never get into that zone where, like you can chill out. And I think a lot of people may have a tough time with it. I don't know what my viewpoint is going to be, but when you look back, on your life and when you look to the future as to what is likely going to be the hot skills, uh, think of someone who's just starting out where you were 2 decades back or 1 decade back. Like, what would you say they should do today to, like bolster their career?
Yeah, um, I think one trait that will continue to, outpace any other skill would be the adaptability. And as human, it's not a philosophical answer, but in general, as human, we are, the reason we survive because we are adaptable and all. So continuous learning, continuous, evolution, learning new skills, especially if somebody's on the tech side, that I think the flexibility to evolve is definitely going to be very helpful. But specifically, when we are talking about data analytics space, then I think having that understanding of the core foundation of the data analytics, having that core foundation around how to extract that insight out of the volume of data that we have, answer the question in the most meaningful way, where decision can be made reliably, whether call it data science, call it machine learning, and however, but getting that value out of the data is going to continue to remain the critical skill over the time.
Yeah. So, on a closing note, is there any learning you'd like to share with our audience?
Yeah, I think the advent of new technologies and evolution of new technologies are not necessarily meant to scare us. It's rather an opportunity to understand this evolution and probably be the part of the evolution, so that as we see the next state of improvements, I would rather be the part of it, rather be against it, or be on the sideline just watching the change.
Yeah.
So that's what I would say.
Wow. Very, very, very interesting. Rohit, that's all I wanted to do, like some candid chat about the bits that we touched upon in our uh, conversation last week. But it was a pleasure having you here. And I know I keep asking these questions where, like, so the reason this show, by the way, started is because I realized I'd never planned on doing these many episodes. Like, my hope was that, oh, every time I'm going into a meeting room, I'm seeing an executive with a lot of budget in a senior role. And unfortunately, they can't go in and publicly tell how clueless they are about some of the things that they have to decide on. And it's not their fault. It's not incompetence. It's just that the world has moved so fast.
Mm.
Like, I'm building in AI and data and analytics, and I still don't know of half the stuff that's happening. So, uh, it was with the intent of like creating an episode that I could send to these leaders, and like they would probably find comfort somewhere in it. And then I like how the journey has evolved. So it was just that, and I think you did a good amount of justice to the whole agenda that we have behind it. So I hope someone
Thank
somewhere
you.
listening to this benefits out of it. An absolute pleasure having you here, Rohit. Thank you so much for doing this.
Likewise, it was my pleasure. Thank you, Vikram.